Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here, coming at you from the Knife Center, and welcome to Knife AQ, episode 139 of the Knife series, where I answer all your questions, sharp or dull. This week we're taking a look at steel and some blade materials and asking ourselves if some of the old classics are still any good. Let's get into it. All right, if you're new to this series, we take your questions. We pull them from the comments sections below these videos. So if you've got a question and you think it might be worthy of a future episode, just drop it in the comments below. First question today comes from Austin Freiberger. It seems like we're entering a new era of budget pocket knives. Let me just pause and say, yeah, budget knives these days are super good. In fact, I think some of the best knives this year have been cheap ones, quite honestly. There's some good stuff out there. Do you think old classics that feature budget steels such as 8CR, 9CR, Obsolete, etc., and non-finger safe locking mechanisms are becoming obsolete to higher performing steels and locking mechanisms at a similar price? This is kind of interesting one to think about. I think your usage of the word obsolete leads me a certain way. And I would say no. Your 8CR steeled knives that you have, your Obsolete knives, whatever, even your 420 J2 knives, if you have them, are not obsolete because they still cut what you need to cut today just as well as they cut what you needed to cut the day you bought them, whenever that was, whether it was 5 years ago, 10, 20, whatever number of years ago. Because, knives are, they're more long-lasting than some of the more temporal things in our world today. Take a look, this laptop here, for instance, for the even to an extent the camera that Thomas is filming me on over there. Hey, Thomas. Hi. Nowadays, if you buy like electronics nowadays, from the day you buy them, every single day after that, it's a little bit worse than it was the day before, because the world around those elements, those electronics, the world it interacts with is constantly changing. But the world of stuff you interact with, with the actual sharpened business end of a blade, the world it interacts with changes at a phenomenally slower pace than, electronics. Chances are you're cutting the same stuff with a pocket knife today as you were cutting 20 years ago, with exceptions, of course, on anything. So no, they're not obsolete, but I would say maybe they become less competitive as competition pushes performance into lower price points. I'll have some examples here, but let's back up and talk about the locks here for a minute. I love, in the budget arena especially, this is where things are really exciting, the proliferation of new crossbar locks, a lot more button locks. I love finger safe locking mechanisms. I've talked about that on this channel a lot, but that doesn't mean a frame lock's no good, or a liner lock or a back lock is no good. In fact, in the higher end sphere of things, those locks still reign supreme. I mean, take the Carbon Ahoy. It's Carbon with a K. I feel like I always have to say that. That just launched, bolster style frame lock here. It'd be cool to see more crossbar locks and button locks in the higher end scheme of things. We're seeing a little bit, but still, definitely not obsolete if the higher end thing is still, using them, I would say. But onto the thought about them being less competitive. This Almar right here is a perfect example. This is the classic Falcon. Used to be, well, it still is an Obsolete blade. Used to be, these were made in Japan, fair bit more expensive, over $100. I'm trying to remember where they ended when they were finally, the Japanese-made versions were finally discontinued. I'm not sure where, but at a certain point, they're no longer competitive with the other stuff out there. So now we have the newer versions. They're made in China rather than Japan. Still has Obsolete, but we're at $48 right here. So it's, it changed the product, essentially. Doesn't mean it's a better or worse knife. Other things may contribute to that, but as a product, this is now more competitive. Maybe the original product became obsolete, but really not then. It's more it not being competitive. It's like cars too. Like the Model T is obsolete. It'll still get you from A to B.
My cars are 20 years old. They still get me to work every day.
Yeah. Notice he said plural. That's because when one doesn't, he has another one that will get him to work that
Just
day.
rotating.
It's your EDC, your everyday car rotation.
Yes.
Is Thomas's EDC rotation. So I hope that made sense. No, I don't think those things are going to be obsolete obsolete, but they are getting less competitive as performance continues to push into lower price points. Which brings me to a steel mentioned in this next question. From Birchie1224, what happens to steels like S30V, which aren't premium materials anymore? Will they replace D2 as a budget material? D2 is what I'm talking about. When I started, getting into knives, D2 was a much more expensive material than it was today. Well, maybe that's not necessarily true, but the knives that were equipped with D2 steel were not budget knives. It wasn't until, it might not have been the first, but like the Ontario Rat 2 in D2 really kind of changed the game in bringing that steel to a more affordable price point. And part of that's because anybody can make it. D2 is just a recipe, whereas S30V is a Crucible Industries product. It's made here in the USA with particle metallurgy processes. So there's some costs certainly baked in to that structure. So I don't think, it's never going to be as cheap as D2 can be, again, because literally anyone can make D2. But I wanted to say, no, I don't think we're going to see S30V replacing stuff like D2 on the budget side of things. But right around the margins, it's getting a little different. I mean, this is the cheapest S30V folder we've got on our site right now. It's a Spyderco Dragonfly. It's like $50. Tiny blade. But you can get, this SE Chirp for about $20 with a D2 steel blade. And, more knife here with the SE, even though it's not as premium of a steel. So things are creeping down. You have to get maybe closer to like $75 to $80 till you start seeing more, like full-size knives in, stuff like S30V. But what we might see, and this is just conjecture, I don't know anything, inside information or anything, stuff like the RPM 9 steel on this CJRB Pyrite alt. This one happens to be one of the KnifeCenter exclusives. In fact, I don't even know if we have any of these in stock at the moment. I just pulled it off my desk. The RPM 9 here is a proprietary budget powder metallurgy steel from CJRB and Artisan Cutlery, the parent company there. Maybe we'll see some more things like this, some more formulations popping up using particle metallurgy at a slightly lower price point, not made in America, unlike S30V, which is. Maybe we'll see some stuff like that. So to answer your question, I don't know. Does that work?
Sure.
But you even say it, the first sentence in here kind of plays into my point at least, or my thought process at least, about S30V not being premium anymore. Yeah, it might not be premium, and might not be as competitive compared to some other things. It's still a doggone good steel. It's still gonna cut really well for you. It's still gonna have a good long lasting edge, just like it did 10, 20, 30 years ago.
It'll still get you to work.
Sure, I guess. I don't know how you're gonna ride your Benchmade bug out to work, but
On a razor edge.
but thanks, Thomas. Next question comes from GSLH2NX. With super steels taking the market by storm, is there a certain super steel or at least higher grade steel that you would recommend for someone just wanting to try one to see what the hype is all about? Specifically thinking about a new folder that I want to see and feel the difference, but I don't want to get something that would be almost impossible to sharpen when the time comes. Thoughts? Sure thing. That's the beauty of this this push for more performance. Everything's always going to get better. Inexpensive knives are going to continue to get better over time as materials are pushed into that arena. And we're seeing powder metal steels, which to way oversimplify things, I'm going to say a super steel has to be a powder metallurgy steel. Like that's kind of the thing there. Even though the RPM 9 being a more budget thing might not be, but anyway, I would suggest S35VN for you. Edge retention is going to be similar, maybe slightly less than your S30V, but it is going to be a little bit easier to sharpen, maybe a little bit less prone to chipping if the heat treat happens to be slightly off on the specific example you've got. Furthermore, don't look at just the steel, look at the actual geometry and grind of the blade, which leads me to recommending this for you right here, the Civivi Badlands Vagabond, KnifeCenter exclusive for 80 bucks in S35VN. Not only does it have a really great steel, it is going to be easy to maintain because of its grind as well, because we've got a very thin hollow grind and a very thin edge to begin with. So when it does come time to maintain that edge, you're not coming into contact with a ton of steel. You don't have to remove a lot to get the edge back. So that's going to help you as well. Moreover, we've got a few cheaper S35VN knives on the site, but they're a little more niche as opposed to more kind of general purpose do everything pocket knives like our QSP Penguin exclusive with the sheep's foot blade, the Boker Kaizen, really thin executive style knife. But this is like the least expensive, good, basic pocket knife that I want to recommend in S35. Like I said, 80 bucks, 3 1/4 inch blade, ball bearings, liner lock, great flipping action, deep carry clip, reversible, thumb studs in addition to the flipper, and injection molded handles that look great as they are, but you can also do a die project on them, a RIT die project. We did that as well, which is also a good bit of fun. Check that knife out. It's a very, very good design. All right, now we come to the segment we call Measured Once, Cut Twice, where we take a second slice at a previously answered question. This comes from Yukon Jack, responding to someone who was looking for a pocketable, Karambit style knife. Karambit style in that it had a finger ring, but a more general purpose blade shape. And several people made this suggestion. This is just the one I pulled as the example. DCA, you disappoint me.
Same.
Ha. I can't believe you left out an obvious choice. The K-Bar TDI Pocket Strike is a perfect answer to the query and more affordable than most of your suggestions. Integrated pocket clip sits lower in the pocket. Maybe I should guest host? I could use a vacation. Come on down. Here's why I didn't put the knife on there. Even though, yes, it technically seems like it would meet all of the requirements, but to me it didn't quite fit for one reason. Well, let me show the knife first. 58 bucks, great price, just over 3-inch blade, AUS 8, see, AUS 8, still useful. Hollow ground blade, phenomenally useful blade shape, pretty comfortable. The finger ring could be maybe slightly larger for folks like me, but it's there and it is going to work. The handle is pretty big on this, and in order to accommodate that, the sheath is actually pretty big as well. Yes, you could put this in a pocket, but that is quite a bit of real estate to take into account. And that's why I considered this briefly, but did leave it out for that reason. Yeah, you could do it. It's a huge thing in the pocket. This would probably, I think, would be more useful actually tucked inside the waistband and clipped thusly. In that case, yeah, going right to town. But still, great knife, just didn't quite fit the requirements of the question for me, but still worth checking out. So I brought it on so we could check it out. All right, now we come to the lightning round for today. First question comes from Marquette Eve. Or Marquette Avenue, perhaps. DCA, what would you say is the most non-tactical looking, but genuinely tactical folding knife, budget or premium? Well, it might be because I was thinking about Almar for the previous question, but the Ultralight Eagles from Almar, Almar, master tactical knife designer. A knife like this with its nearly 4-inch blade, D2 in this case, certainly qualifies as tactical in its nature, even though it's kind of a gentlemanly look as well. You've got fast access, you've got easy access out of the pocket, I should say, and a fast deploying blade and a nice strong lock to back it up. I'd say that works. Plenty of other things out there, I'm sure. That's just what jumped to mind for me. Comments section. drop your non-tactical looking tactical suggestions in the comments. Maybe it'll be in a measured once, cut twice feature on a future episode. Next question comes from Costulis7. Hi, DCA and Thomas.
Hey.
Why do not all pocket knives have a deep carry pocket clip? Is there any advantage to a standard one, or is it about cost? Thanks, and keep spreading the blade gospel. It's funny. Nothing to do with cost, I think. I mean, in either case, they're just folded bits of metal. But it's your question supposes that is the best way in all scenarios for a pocket clip to be constructed. There we go. Some people like them though, some people don't. What are the advantages to a non-deep carry? Well, it keeps it deeper in the pocket and less visible for some folks. That is certainly something to be appreciated. Disadvantages of a deep carry pocket clip. Let's hold one up here. They can be more difficult to extract from the pocket because there is less sticking up to grab a hold of. Where would that be a specific problem? Heavy work knives and tactical knives. You don't want to be fumbling about if you're a true tactical user and needing to use your knife in a true tactical situation. You want to be able to access that knife quickly and without having to think and without having to fumble for it. So the easier that is to do, the better the outcome's going to be. So it's a design consideration. It's certainly not a cost consideration, but it is a preference consideration as well. That is why not all knives have deep carry pocket clips, nor do I think they should all have deep carry pocket clips. Now we come to, even though I'm carrying a knife right now with a deep carry pocket clip. Anyway, now we come to our final question for today, which is, of course, our most serious question of the day, which today comes from Mr. Pet Shop Boy. Most serious question. Any ideas for an EDC pizza knife? I'm a pizza cook by trade, so it would be helpful. Are you cooking pizzas in the pet shop? Wait, what are you doing with the pets?
Where else do you get pepperoni?
Now I feel like I can't answer this question, but we're in it. We've gone too far. Anyway, I do have a suggestion for you right here. You may want to invest in a custom sheath to suit your carry preferences, but it's got to be the Mazarin Lamata Ulu. Yes?
That is a big cheese knife.
That is a big cheese knife. If this is too small for you, I don't know what your definition of EDC is. You could get the tandem kitchen cutter, also from Mazarin, or as we like to affectionately call it here, the Tulu.
Or clever.
Just thinking how this might even be more useful in the pet shops. No, we're not going to talk about that. That's all we have for today, folks. Make sure to leave your questions down in the comments below. And of course, keep hitting me with your most serious questions as well. Let me know what you thought of the answers. Let me know if you have alternate suggestions. And if you want any of these knives in front of me here today, check out the links in the description that'll take you to KnifeCenter.com. Where don't forget about our long-running Knife Rewards program, where when you pick up some knives today, you get to earn money towards a future knife, sometimes up to 5% and even more. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center. That's Thomas behind the camera. We're signing off. See you next time.